Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a wonderful day over here. I don't know where in this beautiful world you are, but this is Sadie Uribe, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California, and it is a gorgeous day over here. We're very excited. We have panelists for you today from all over the world, and we are going to be discussing many things. So I'm actually going to let Simona tell you about what we're going to be having in our panel discussion today. So I'm just giving it a moment here because we have many participants. We have over 350 folks registered for this event today. So we are very excited, and we just want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to listen to the presentation today. So let's just give it a couple of moments as people come in, and as well that is happening, I'm just going to give you a little housekeeping. I have disabled the chat window. The chat window will be where the panelists will be dropping in information for you. If you have any questions, you have something that you would like one of the panelists to discuss, please drop that into the Q&A. And when we get to the Q&A portion, we will have a chance to answer your questions. But let me get into my slide presentation over here for you so Simona can tell you a little bit more about ourselves and what we're doing. So Simona, are we ready? Are we ready to have some fun today?
Thank you, Sadie, for being our producer and for all your great support in making today's event happen. Yes, we are ready. Hello and welcome to Recovery and Resilience of Women in International Trade program. Today's event, through today's event, we are continuing to celebrate Women's History Month, as we also celebrate in the US the Arab American Heritage Month in April. Today's event recognizes the fundamental role of the agreement between the United States of America, the United Mexican States, and Canada has on small and medium-sized enterprises who are the engines of the North American economy, and highlights the voices of women in trade in the region. This program is part of a series of virtual events, and it is a collaboration between the Organization of Women in International Trade, OWIT, its chapters in Orange County, Los Angeles, Mexico, Ottawa, and Toronto, and the Los Angeles Small Business Development Center Go Global program hosted by the Ventura Economic Development Collaborative. Today, we have brought together customs experts and women in trade entrepreneurs from the three countries. So you all have a chance to learn who they are, what resources they have used, how they have dealt with some of the challenges they faced in their careers, and what are their perspectives on the future of trade. I am Simona Racek. Next slide, please. I am your host today. I wear three different hats in the international trade community. I am the Director of Global Trade at Getting to Global, an innovative technology company that provides solutions and programs to multiply the impact of economic development, trade, and investment organizations around the world. I serve as an export advisor at the Los Angeles SBDC Network, and I am the president of Women in International Trade Orange County chapter in Southern California. Next slide. Through my work at the Los Angeles SBDC, I help manage the LA SBDC Go Global Trade program, which is led by Dr. Ray Bowman and hosted by EDC Ventura. The program includes no-cost, focused one-on-one technical advising in all the areas listed on this slide, from developing an export plan to learning about e-commerce digital tools to navigating export financing. The LA SBDC Network Centers are part of America's SBDC. We are a nationwide network of small business development centers powered by the Small Business Administration, SBA. We have 9 local centers in Los Angeles, 45 centers in California, and nearly 1,000 local centers throughout the nation available to provide no-cost one-on-one business assistance and low-cost training to new and existing businesses. In California, we are funded through a cooperative agreement between SBA and California Governor Office of Business and Economic Development, GOBES. Next slide, please. Our program moderator today is Dr. Ray Bowman, the Los Angeles SBDC International Trade Director, and also the Ventura and Santa Barbara SBDC Director. Dr. Bowman is an international trade business veteran with more than 30 years in international trade experience. He is a Los Angeles District Expo Council member, a lecturer, and a business and trade analyst. Next slide. I have listed for all of you in the chat the speaker's biography and the program sponsors. We will not have time in the introduction to tell you all about the wonderful and distinguished speakers we have today. So please make sure to download the document in the chat so you can learn more about all of our great speakers today. To answer the question, who is OWIT, Organization of Women in International Trade, let's start with the women leaders of the OWIT chapters participating today, without whom this event would not happen. Many thanks to our OWIT presidents, starting with OWIT International President Frida Owinga. Please, presidents, turn on your video so your members could recognize you if you could. We have OWIT Mexico President Ingrid Orozco in the left corner, OWIT Ottawa co-presidents Natalie Bradbury and T-MEC Jumel in the right corner, WIT LA President Lilian Navarrete, and OWIT Toronto VP International Susan Baca, and myself in the left corner, President of WIT Orange County. Next slide. We are a nonprofit volunteer-run organization. We have been serving the business trade community since 1985, and our role in the trade business community is to foster international trade and the advancement of women in business and trade by providing information about current trade issues through workshops, events like today, by providing professional development and leadership opportunities, mentoring a vital international business network, and also offering scholarship to the next generation of business leaders. WIDOC members are professional women, men, and non-binary people whose career encompasses all aspects of trade. We believe that quality programs like today, a solid network collaboration, and cutting-edge information are the basis of our continued success. Next slide. I will now present to you our distinguished speakers, starting with our OWIT president, Frida Owinga, who has been president of the Organization of Women International Trade since January of this year. Frida is also the founder of Passion for Profit, a company that started in 2009 as a result of many people asking for a job. Frida has more than 25 years experience in very different sectors of business. Next slide, please. Our keynote speaker and distinguished guest today is Camille Richardson, Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Middle East and Africa Global Markets, and also the founder of Wealthy Initiative, the Women Empowered Leave Legacies Through Trade. We are excited to have Camille with us today, and we can't wait to hear her introductory remarks. Next slide. Our Mexico expert speaker today is Ingrid Orozco. She is the president of OWIT Mexico, and as you can see on this slide, she is part of many organizations. She's the CEO of ULEAD International Global Trade Promotion Agency in Mexico. She is the official partner and national coordinator for She Trades in Mexico, organization founded by International Trade Center. Next slide. From United States, I am sorry for this mistake, from Canada, we have our custom expert, Carol West. Carol is the president and CEO of Canadian Society of Customs Brokers. She has led and participated in many Canadian and international discussions on harmonization and data requirements. We are very pleased to have Carol West join us today, and we look forward to hear her insights. Next slide. From United States, and again, I apologize for the mistake. It says Canada at the top, but it is United States. We have Jen Fields, President of National Customs Brokers and Forwarder Association of America, NCBFAA. Jen Fields began her career with John S. James Company when she was 18 years old. She became a licensed custom broker in 1988. She has served on as a board member, chaired of the NEI committee and chaired of the transportation committee of the National Custom Brokers and Freight Forward Association. She's currently the president of NCBFAA. Next slide, please. Now we move to our women in international trade entrepreneurs from Mexico. We have Leticia Veronica Rosales Pego. Leticia has a wonderful, inspiring story. She is the founder of Sumaya. She defines herself as an economist, mother, and entrepreneur. I can't wait for you to meet her today. Next slide. From Canada, we have Susie York, board director and founder of Love Good Fats. She is a board member, advisor, founder, brand builder, CEO, CMO, lifelong marketer, marketing plans, new brands, innovation, relaunching, profitable growth plans. I love your introduction, Susie. You could learn more about Love Good Fats at lovegoodfats.com. Next slide. From United States, we have Jane Skeeter. She's the CEO and president of Ultra Glass Incorporation, the world leader manufacturer of design, architectural, and high-performance glass and glass tile. The company offers a full complement of glass fabrication technique and innovation processes per project of all scales. You can learn more about Jane at ultraglass.com. Next slide. We'd like to thank our sponsor. Without the sponsor, we won't be able to have these wonderful events for you. Aaron Fox International Law Firm is one of our sponsors. You can learn about their international trade services at afslaw.com. Next slide. We have Kowada International from Canada, founded in 1985. It's a leading global development consulting company. Please learn more at kowada.com about our sponsor. Next slide. We have Welch LLP from Canada, a chartered public accounting firm that has deep roots in the community it serves. You can learn more about Welch LLP at welchllp.com. Next slide. Export Development Canada is one of our program sponsors today. Financial Crown Corporation dedicated to helping Canadian companies of all sizes succeed on the world stage. You could learn more about them at edc.ca. Next slide. We have from Los Angeles, we have Krieger Worldwide International Domestic Freight Forwarder as our sponsor. You can learn about normal Krieger services at nkinc.com. Next slide. Many thanks for Port of Los Angeles for being our sponsor through the Trade Connect program. It's a program for small and medium-sized businesses to learn about export markets and to educate themselves before they expand globally. I am one of the product of the Trade Connect program. You can learn more about at the website listed at the bottom of this page, portlosangeles.org/Trade Connect. Next slide. Many thanks to our continuing supporting sponsor, US Commercial Service. You could learn more about their programs at trade.gov, Export Solutions. Please visit the website and learn, locate the local office near you and learn how you could they could be of support for your international global expansion. Next slide. I want to make sure we thank our local supporting partner from US Commercial Service Irvine office led by Jean Mayfield. They've been a great supporter for many years for our chapter in Southern California, and we're very grateful for their support with organizing today's event. Next slide. Our last supporting partner is Getting to Global, an innovative technology company that works with economic development, trade, and investment promotion organization from around the world. They have tools, data, economic development programs that could support scaling your services. Please learn more at gettingtoglobal.org. And next, last slide, I wanted to thank our attendees from all over the world joining today. I realized yesterday in the afternoon that we have attendees from 20 countries joining, and this is the power of the Organization of Women in Trade network. We are present in different continents and different countries throughout the world, and we thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Now I will be handing the virtual floor to our OWIT President, Frida Owinga. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simona, and all the organizers of this wonderful event this evening. Greetings from Nairobi. It is the evening right now. Good evening, good afternoon, from wherever you are in the world. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here with you this evening. Today is a demonstration of every dark cloud has a silver lining as we experience stories of impact, resilience, and recovery from members and partners of OWIT, Orange County, Los Angeles, Mexico, Toronto, and Ottawa, all from the comfort of our homes or offices. OWIT is a global organization with 25 locally operated chapters, of which we are experiencing 5 of them tonight. Chapters host events that educate members and foster the creation of new international and domestic connections. When individuals register with a local chapter, they are added as members of the global network. While the COVID-19 pandemic has had a negative impact on our lives and livelihoods globally, women entrepreneurs have demonstrated resilience, bolstered their workforces, sharpened their strategies, and strengthened their companies, according to a study by EY Global. While revenue losses were still common, respondents noted that they were largely attributed to sector-specific performance being severely impacted by the pandemic and the inability to replace business and customers lost during the pandemic downturn. While we acknowledge the negative impact, many agree it is time to get on the recovery track, and what we are hearing from our members continually is that we are ready to move forward. As we get on the recovery track, some trajectories driving change in the global economies include the changing consumer behavior. Look at us sitting in our homes, having a 3-country webinar, supply chain diversification, and technological innovation like the one we have here today of 3 countries gathered to have conversations of resilience and recovery to support each other to build back better. Organizations looking to recover and build back better should continue to articulate which problems they can solve really well based on their organizational proficiency and strive to forge partnerships that can leverage technology to optimize access to global supply chains. Partnership is going to be extremely crucial to be able to build better, and that is what we're relying on mostly as Organization of Women in International Trade. The pandemic has triggered a surge in technological innovation, but many women still require support considering the adoption challenges like access to skills and capital to move their businesses online, lack of digital literacy skills, access to capital to invest in automation and/or digital processes, and sometimes even access to affordable and reliable internet, depending on which part of the world they reside in. We are currently exploring ways to boost adoption of technological innovations for our members to move their businesses online, acquire digital literacy skills, and access to capital to invest in automation and digital processes as they continue to pivot. So that is going to be our key focus, supporting our women to get technologically savvy to be able to pivot. We are continually grateful to our members who host capacity building programs to equip and empower women in trade around the globe. You just heard Simona say that we are 20 countries represented here tonight. We are also grateful to our partners who give us access to resources and speakers to support meaningful programs of impact like the one we are having here today. We remain committed to fostering international trade and the advancement of women in business by providing a collective forum to support education, facilitate information exchange, and to promote networking. In pursuing these goals, we strive to provide a rewarding volunteer environment to stay at the forefront of trade and technological developments, and also to build partnerships and alliances with peer organizations and associations. You can find more information on our website, www.owit.org. I leave with you the words of Serena Williams. Every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. We are strongest when we cheer each other on. I'd like now to again congratulate OWIT chapters of Orange County, Los Angeles, Mexico, Toronto, and Ottawa for hosting us today, and everyone who has joined us from different parts of the world. Thank you very much, and we look forward to a very invigorating conversation. I now have the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming our guest speaker, Ms. Camille Richardson, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Middle East and Africa Global Markets and the founder of Women Empowered Leave Legacies Through Trade and Investment, the Wealthy Initiative. Ms. Camille Richardson.
Thank you so much, Frida, and greetings everyone, wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to join all of you today. And it's just wonderful to have another opportunity, yet another opportunity to collaborate with OWIT because we have a shared value of supporting women in international trade. And work in this area since I've been in this chair has really become a labor of love for me. Perhaps it's really been a labor of love throughout my career, but I think that it just really came into sharp focus during the pandemic. And we realized when we launched our Wealthy Initiative, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a minute, that this was the right time for this initiative. And I like to look at the pandemic as sort of a cloud with a silver lining that perhaps offered opportunities that we didn't really understand when we were in the middle of them. But looking back, we can now perhaps describe them as a silver lining or a set of opportunities. And part of the reason for that is that the stars have really aligned with supporting women in business and women in trade. We created our Women Empowered Leave Legacies through Trade and Investment, or Wealthy Initiative, in January in 2021, and we launched it where Frida is sitting now virtually. We launched it there in Kenya, and we launched it ahead of the administration. Within a few short months after our launch of the Wealthy program, the administration came out with gender equity programming, and our own secretary came out with a priority of really wanting to make sure that we fulfilled our mission as the Commerce Department of ensuring not just economic recovery for the United States, but economic recovery around the world through partnership and shared prosperity. Now, one key component of our efforts here at Commerce that our secretary has refocused us on with her own priorities is to making sure that our economic recovery and growth is inclusive, and that it's inclusive of those communities that are typically underrepresented or underserved. And women tend to be among those communities, unfortunately. But now it's fortunate with the silver lining and our refocusing of our efforts and energy and resources that we now very much have a very strong focus on supporting women getting into the trade game in order to recover faster together and to build back better together faster from the pandemic. Because we know through years of experience in the International Trade Administration at the Commerce Department that trade creates higher paying, higher skilled jobs more quickly. So we want to serve as many clients as possible, and certainly to help more women, more minorities, more Native Americans, more rural companies get into the trade game to recover faster. Soon after, about a year after Secretary Raimundo came into office, we also had the very first woman in the history of the Commerce Department appointed to be Undersecretary of our International Trade Administration. And her name is Maurice Galago, and she has just been an amazing support for the Wealthy program. I also taking up the standard and making it her priority to support the Wealthy program, but not just the Wealthy program, but the expansion of Wealthy across the world. So I think that everyone probably has her own story or his own story about how our lives were impacted by a cascade of social and economic challenges because of the pandemic. And most of you won't be surprised that the pandemic disproportionately impacted women and women-led businesses. In fact, the United Nations estimates that women perform 75% of the world's unpaid work, which effectively subsidizes the global economy. We do 60% more household work than men and perform the vast majority of unpaid care work for children, the elderly, and the sick. I know that personally. I have a 91-year-old mother who lives with me, and I'm her caregiver. So the UN also goes on to report the following key figures that shed light on the current state of affairs for women. For example, women are still less likely than men to have access to financial institutions or to have a bank account. And access to financing was a running theme throughout my virtual visits throughout the Middle East and Africa, as well as our wealthy coffee chats. And I will talk a little bit more about that later. But you should also know that right now, 65% of men report having an account at a formal financial institution, while only 58% of women do so worldwide. Also, unfortunately, globally, women are less likely to be entrepreneurs and face more disadvantages in starting a business. In 40% of the world's economies, women's early stage entrepreneurial activity is half or less than half of that of men's. So we have some work to do, ladies and allies and supporters. Women still face considerable constraints toward achieving the highest corporate leadership positions. So at the other end of the spectrum, in the C-suite, we just have one recent statistic where up from 5% as recently as last summer, there are now 41 women of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So that now has gone up to 8.1%. I guess, something is better than nothing, but we can still do better. We applaud this improvement and we definitely have more to do. The digital divide continues to hold a mirror to the fundamental differences in the way many women live. There are approximately 3.9 billion people in the world today who are offline. Many of them are in rural areas, they're poorer and they're less educated, and they tend to be mostly women and girls. What if digital technology was a way in for these women into the digital economy, a way in to let them out of poverty, a way in for them to become entrepreneurial? Think about the possibilities. It really is in everyone's best interest to facilitate the full participation of women in every aspect of the business sector of the global economy. We all prosper with the ingenuity, creativity, and management that emerges from women. And we also know that women bring their dollars back to their family, back to their communities, where they're likely to have a wider, longer lasting local impact. Bloomberg recently reported that, quote, global economic growth could get a $20 trillion boost if women were educated at the same levels as men and held the same number of jobs. Not even necessarily talking about the pay gap. Imagine that, ladies, $20 trillion globally. We got work to do. To begin bridging this yawning divide that has a lot of different socioeconomic aspects to it, as I mentioned in January of last year, 2021, we launched the Women Empowered Leave Legacies Through Trade and Investment, or WELTI for short. Because the global pandemic was forcing us all to rethink how we live and work. And the pivot to the virtual world was not an easy one. Those of you, I don't know how many of you have heard of or read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Those of us who were already operating in the digital space, whether we were teaching online or engaging in telemedicine or selling our services online or leveraging social media, were able to really ride that wave successfully. We actually had a wealthy coffee chat focused on women entrepreneurs in South Africa just last year who were doing that and doing successfully. And that really has been the key to the WELTI program, having women in business tell their stories, how they overcame a challenge, how they grew, how they seized opportunities, how they leveraged resources, whether they were local or whether they came from the United States or elsewhere, and inspiring women on this side of the pond to get into the trade game. And I hope that some of what I'm saying to you today, if you're not already in trade, that you're going to get into it. If you're not already accessing commerce resources at a local U.S. Export Assistance Center or USMCA, that you check out the trade.gov website and you really start leveraging what we have to offer. You pay taxes, you pay for our services, many of them, not all of them. So we really are there for you. So one of the things that we noticed through the WELTI initiative was that women there were definitely grappling with the economic impacts of the pandemic there and here. And so we learned how to adjust. We learned how to do things remotely. I'm a big fan of telework as a result of all this. And so we were able to sort of take our sitting at home captive audience and just really engage and really start digging into this topic. and just really having women on both sides of the pond, learning from each other, connecting with each other. We got to a point where I think we started small, but we had follow-on events. So for example, our event in Kenya, featured a woman who had started off with kind of almost an Avon lady type business, importing beauty products from the United States, and she grew it into a chain of pharmacies. And that inspired a woman in Miami to say, hey, can I send you my product? And then we had a matchmaking session, and then we had a capacity building session for Kenyan women importers. And then we did, I think, another series throughout Africa. We did expanded to the Middle East, and we got our AmChams involved. And soon our audiences kind of swelled to about 100, 125, 150 on each coffee chat as more women learned about it and started tuning in. And I thought to myself, what are we doing all this for? Well, I decided that we were on what I started calling a March to March. Wanted to really do something in March of this year for International Women's Day, for Women's History Month. And so we were able to build momentum through these chats. We were able to carve out themes, set an agenda, invite people, find sponsors, even albeit at the last minute, get support from partners like OWIT for what we called a Wealthy Summit, our very first Wealthy Summit that we held in conjunction with our big Trade Winds event for the Middle East and Africa that took place in Dubai, March 6th and 8th. There was a business forum, there was a Trade Winds forum, there was a Wealthy Summit, there was a trade mission on one end and a trade mission on the other. And I think we sold out within a month. People were so excited about the opportunity, the possibility of connecting in person. But we made sure with our Wealthy Summit that we did a hybrid model where we streamed it live. You can get a recording if you like. It was a really amazing experience. Perhaps there are some Wealthy Summit alumni who are here on the call. I know Frida was there. And we really, I think, sparked something new. And so we're on what I like to call our next March to March with the launch of our Wealthy 2.0 initiative. It may not keep the same name. It was not exactly a favorite of our undersecretary. So if anyone has any suggestions, we'll see. But we did notice that as we had these, that LinkedIn kind of became on fire. So look on LinkedIn. I think I have a hashtag Wealthy somewhere on my background. Look for that. If you're participating in any Wealthy events, please tag us with hashtag Wealthy until we change the name. We really want to, under our Wealthy 2.0, accomplish a few things. Number one, aside from just highlighting markets, we also want to highlight capacity building topics. So that might happen on a webinar, it might happen through a podcast series. We're still putting our editorial calendar together now. If any of you have any ideas for topics, we'd love to hear them. And we certainly will continue to partner with OWIT moving forward. Frida and I actually had a chance to sit down after the Wealthy Summit and have tea. And she said, Camille, I'd really like to help you build this Wealthy concept into an ecosystem. And that word really, really resonated with me. And I've repeated it elsewhere, and it's really resonated elsewhere. So it's going to be OWIT, there's going to be other public-private partners. So Wealthy 2.0 will be about capacity building. It will also be about inviting public and private partners to the table, taking those resources and turning them into a resource library so that women entrepreneurs, women in business know where to go to get these resources. On the way to our next Wealthy Summit, which I'd like to make a worldwide summit. We've already kind of caught on in other world regions. So I know that Asia is very much interested within ITA of rolling something out on Wealthy. Our colleagues in Western Hemisphere, we're working very closely with them. So stay tuned for more news from them on what Wealthy could look like in Western Hemisphere. And then our other world regions, Europe and China, are also engaging in some activities as well. So Wealthy, we want to have a Wealthy Worldwide Summit. I've already checked. International Women's Day is on a Wednesday, March 8th in 2023. So we're sort of, that's our vision, moving toward an even bigger worldwide vision that has been supported by our undersecretary as well as our secretary. And I know that all the way up to the White House, this fits in with what this administration is about when it comes to Build Back Better. So one of the things that we learned is that, women they struggle with access to financing. So we're going to have capacity building sessions around that. We also learned that, that there are questions in terms of sort of how do I achieve that work-life balance? That could be something that we also highlight. But I think one of the things that we've always needed as a organization, ITA and the U.S. Commercial Service that I'm part of as a senior foreign service officer, we, for whatever strange reason, remain the best kept secret in international trade. Don't ask me why. So if you have participated in WELTI or you like this idea and you want more information, don't forget to tell your friends. Invite your friends to the table as well. Invite women who could benefit from learning something about this, who could perhaps get in touch with a trade specialist from the Commerce team in the U.S. Export Assistance Center or USIAC, or to talk to an SBA colleague. We're often co-located with SBA and as well as the Export-Import Banks. You want to talk about access to USG resources, they're in almost all 50 states. If you go to our trade.gov website, there will certainly be more information. As we expand, we intend to stay very much focused on our core mission of inspiring women to get into the trade game, or inspiring women on that side to think about investing in the United States. We do have a Select USA program. There's a Global Women in Tech program. We highlighted that in Saudi Arabia in November with our secretary and the Saudi ambassador to the United States. So we really are a global network at your disposal. We have over 100 offices in the United States. I believe we have 5 offices in the LA area alone, in California. We are where you are. It's just a question of accessing us for our services. We are information brokers. We are able to connect you with trusted contacts in the 80 or so markets where we have commercial posts. Where we don't have commercial posts, we often partner with the State Department. We can offer our Gold Key service, whether you're going alone or going on a trade mission where you have a tailored schedule of appointments. But most importantly, if you're already doing business and maybe you want to expand, we have trade specialists like Richard and others who are able to sit down with you and actually plan out where you should think about going and when, so that you can actually take your business plan and turn it into an international business plan and international strategy. We have country commercial guides, which we will be updating in June, which can help you make an informed business decision about where you would like to go. We have commercial officers like me, and we have locally engaged staff at our commercial posts across the world who also publish market intelligence updates. So you don't necessarily have to leave your desk or leave your home. You can just look up a country commercial guide or look at a country for the market intelligence that our posts are providing about current opportunities. Here in the Middle East and Africa, we have an early stage trade leads system called ELMIA, Express Leads MIA, which is Salesforce based, where we're pushing opportunities in infrastructure, in healthcare, in energy, and in aerospace and defense, and digital ICT, all kinds of opportunities, and agribusiness to companies that are interested in those things. So, we can facilitate your participation, be it virtual or actual, in some of our overseas trade mission and events. So please reach out to our commercial service team in the US field, whether you're in Southern California or elsewhere. But in conclusion, I just want to just give you an idea of some of the things that are coming up very, very soon. With WELTI, we're going to publish an editorial calendar of events and podcasts and virtual and real outreach. Keep in mind that May is World Trade Month. And there will be a Med Week, a Minority Enterprise Development Week in May. So these are going to be events that we hope to partner on and feature more information and content for women in business. There will be international buyer program shows. So for example, the Offshore Technology Conference in Houston, the National Association of Broadcasters show, where our commercial posts overseas will bring delegations of buyers to these shows. So if you're not already participating, consider participating. We have a minority business trade mission going to Europe in early May, to Portugal, Italy, and Spain, I believe. We have an ICT mission going to South Africa in November, all kinds of things. And all this should be available on our trade.gov website. So I want to thank, in closing, OWIT and the Women in International Trade of Orange County for this wonderful opportunity to be part of your collective efforts and to continue to do our part to support the recovery and resilience of women in trade. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Camille Richardson, for your tireless work to empower women entrepreneurs, for founding the WELTI Initiative, for leading us and inspire us to do our parts towards economic justice. You can all find the link to the Wealth Initiative in the biography speakers document I put in the chat. Yes, we got a lot of work to do. Our next OWIT collaboration program is on April 29th at the end of this month and will highlight the voice of women in trade from Kenya, the OWIT Nairobi chapter. We'll learn and connect with Kenyan women in trade, so please keep an eye on our LinkedIn account. I put the information in the chat as well. Without further ado, I will now hand over the virtual floor to our moderator, Dr. Ray Bowman, to start the program. We have all the OWIT presidents ready to answer your Q&A in the Q&A forum. So to all attendees, please use the forum to ask us questions during the program. Thank you, Dr. Bowman. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Simona. And, you know, it's such an honor to be a part of this event highlighting women in international trade. And really, when we look at the unprecedented attendance of this event, I dare say this event is also a celebration, and a celebration of the role and the contribution and the impact of women in international trade. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate the role, impact, and contributions than to have the type of panel that we have. We have 6 panelists, we have 3 experts in regulatory and 3 global entrepreneurs. And so I'm going to go through the questions. We're going to go fairly rapidly, about 2 minutes or so per panelist per question. And one of the first questions I have, and I think this is important to talk about, is, you know, we all have a different story of how we got into international trade, right? Because it's something that cuts across industries. So my first question to the panelists is, how did you get your start in trade? So first person I'd like to ask is Ingrid. And could you tell us how you got your start?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. And yeah, the way that I started in trade, it was very organic and it was very natural because, you know, as natural diplomat, as internationalist, I used to have so many friends all over the world. And every single time that I visit them, the first thing that I used to go is to the supermarkets to see what I could find that was not present in my market in Mexico. So we started to exchange things, and every single time that everyone visited me or I visited them, it's like, could you bring me this? Could you bring me there? And then I realized that the huge opportunity, you know, on the different products and services that we could just exchange. So after that, I started, I wanted to always prepare myself to know more and to, you know, to get into different programs and education. So I pursue an MBA, an executive MBA, and then a business development expertise or degrees. And I started to realize how trade is central to ending global poverty and to create prosperity. So how countries that are open to international trade tended to be more or grow faster, to innovate, improve productivity, and to provide higher income and more opportunities to their people. So I decided to jump into trade. And to make trade possible, or to get trade possible, not just for my community or for, you know, when I founded the company, but also, and the most important part, to women, to boost more women in trade and to give them skills, education, opportunities, and networks for them to trade. So that was my way, and it's still, you know, the way to benefit some lower income households by offering consumers more affordable goods and services. And that, you know, I could continue with the story, because after that I started to lead the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs, and then to see how important it was for them to create these networks and to exchange goods and services, and how they could come together stronger and generating more opportunities that ended up into a specific things, that creation of prosperity. That is not common sense, and that is not a coincidence that prosperity is a feminine noun. Also how they reach, or they were getting like more opportunities, not just in this market but in international markets. And yeah, and when you invest in a woman, as just have been mentioned.
Well, and
Yeah,
certainly that.
my food, you know, my food.
Well, and certainly your passion comes through for sure. So, Jan, how did you get involved in trade?
Hi.
Hi, Jan.
Good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. My story may be a little bit different. When I graduated from high school, my parents didn't have the money to send me to college, so I was going to have to work a year to get up some money so that I could attend college. I was going to a recruiter, a physical recruiter. And I looked in a door and I recognized the name and I looked in and I said, "Are you hiring anyone?" Well, they said yes. So I went in and they asked me, now this was in the 70s. They asked me my age, my weight, where my husband worked, what he did, what church my father went to, and if I was planning on having babies soon. And now that in the 70s was all legal. They could ask those questions. Now, thank goodness they cannot. We know how far we've come along in that. But when I started working with a company, I fell in love with a family company, private. I began, all the managers were male. Now 90% of the managers are female. And I began by volunteering. If anybody had anything to do, it was, I'll do it. I had my hand up all the time. I'll do it. Even if it was secretarial work, go get coffee. I'll do it. I'll do it. And so by that, they recognized me to be someone who was enthusiastic about things. We had a Savannah men's traffic club, so I started a Savannah women's traffic club. My boss took me to the NCBFAA conference, and I was a guest at their forwarding committee meeting. And in the forwarding committee, they asked, "Will anybody take minutes?" Well, it was silence, pin dropped. And I back in the corner saying, "I'll take minutes." And 5 years later, I am the chairman of that committee. So I did my progressing by volunteering for everything. It didn't matter what it was, even if it was secretarial, I'll do it, and I'll do such a good job. You'll see that I can do more. Less than 10 years ago, the NCBFAA had our first woman officer. Less than 10 years, it probably was 6 or 7. Now 4 out of 5 of our officers are women. So I'm very proud to be, in this seminar, in this webinar, and I thank you for, glad to meet everybody.
Well, and I just love that not only inspiration but entrepreneurial mindset. So that's wonderful. Carol, how did you get started in trade?
Thanks, Ray. And I love listening to Jan's story and to Ingrid's story. I know Jan very well. I'm hoping to get to know Ingrid very well. When Ingrid used the word organic to describe her experience, I guess I described the word serendipity to describe mine. So there's room for both. I've spent a long time working on international trade in the private sector, but I've also worked in the public sector and in the academic world. So my academic life involved research and teaching about government, politics, policy, and I was interested in how decisions were made and how the private sector could be engaged in decision-making at all levels of government. Then I arrived in government and became one of those people who actually could make decisions, or maybe I thought I could make decisions. I could at least make recommendations for decision makers. That was the place I really became interested in trade and how borders work. Trade is complicated, and we'll hear more about that this afternoon for sure. And that appealed to me. And yet trade is also very, very important to prosperity and competitiveness in a world of increasing globalization. And we certainly heard Ingrid's comments about that. From there, it was a short jump to the private sector, where I've spent more than 3 decades finding opportunities to open doors for collaboration between business and government, all in the interests of trade facilitation. So it hasn't always been an easy path, but I've loved it. And because you're a group devoted to women in trade, I have to add a personal note. I'm grateful for every opportunity I've had over these years to work with women, whether this has been in my Canadian organization, internationally, and capacity building work in other countries. And I have a favorite cartoon, which appeared years ago in the New Yorker magazine, which shows a single woman surrounded by men at a boardroom table. And the caption is, "That's a splendid idea, Miss Dickinson. I wonder if one of the men would like to suggest it." That is really a lot like Jan's experience. And I'm sure many of you have had a similar experience. And yes, things are better now. That's because of your competence, your vision, your resilience. So thank you for all that you do for women in trade. All of the speakers on this panel, our keynote speakers, and of course our participants in this event, and for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much, Carol, and it's just so cool to hear that advocacy come through, and that hasn't stopped in your career for sure. Letitia, how did you start out in trade?
Good afternoon, some of you. Thank you for having me. It was strange, Raymond, because I was supposed to be an academic. I just started university with 15 years old. I got a National Economic Prize very young, before beginning my master's degree. When I came back from my master's degree with 24 years old, my father asked me to rule the family business. I am the oldest in my home. So I took the challenge with 24 years old with knowledge, but no experience at all. 4 months later, we faced one of the most more important devaluation in Mexico, December 1994. And it was very sad because we lost everything as a family. It was really sad. I started a new business very small from there. It was growing step by step, little by little. And I decided to form a family. And I make this arrangement with my husband. He was going to run the business and he has done very, very well. And I was going to grow my kids. And this is the second time that I have to make a new start because I face this glass ceiling that most women have when having children. But the funny thing is that giving my life to grow my children, I found my passion. And my passion was to teach them how to eat healthy. And the way I looked for that was building an urban garden and studying about building this urban garden in the kindergarten school. I discovered production methods. I discovered the importance of pollinators. And I just started to study. And I found there my passion. And I learned that Mexico is a very good honey producer, very high quality, and nobody knows it. And Mexico exports honey as a commodity with no differentiation at all. So I decided to make a change in this way to trade honey and bring prosperity to beekeepers. In Mexico, there are 43,000 families depending on beekeeping, and they sell honey in with no differentiation at all. So I just started a new firm, a new business with support of my husband, my kids. I broke the glass ceiling and I made a new start. The third time I had to make a new start is very sad, and I will not go over it because it's painful. It has to do with machismo thing that still remains in some of the family. So I will not go back to that because I always look for the future, and I will always try to make for the recovery thing. So the thing that I could share with all women here is that have a lot of look for the strength in your very inside to get over all the difficult things that we have to face as a women. And this strength must come from your very inside, from knowledge, from hard work, and from having a lot of confidence in yourself. Never lose your confidence.
What I love about what you said too is and I hear this over and over again with our women entrepreneurs, is this ability to reinvent yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly the case with you in overcoming challenges. Jane, how did you get started? You're muted, Jane.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. And by the way,
That's
I'm
okay.
really grateful and so grateful to be here and honored to be among these extraordinary women and just blown away. So thank you very much. My foray into international trade was also very organic. We make specialty architectural glass. So our two main markets are either what we call OEM, original equipment manufacturers, where we're designing and making products such as tile and wood door inserts for other manufacturers and distributors. So it just so happened that several of those also had facilities elsewhere, such as Mexico, and we would ship into those countries, and they started to buy more and more from us. But our greater market is really in specialty designs. And so we work therefore with architects and interior designers to create a design and pattern and work for them. And as it turned out, one of the companies that we had pitched and was specifying our product because of its innovation and ability to withstand all sorts of extreme weather conditions, was molded and painted with permanent paint that was our technology. And we got specified for the world's 6th largest hospital in Kuwait. It took us a long time to really land it because there was much competition and there were a lot of changes and so forth. But we got this very, very large project in Kuwait. And from that, now we're up for other projects in the area. So that was a very kind of arduous project to get done. It was 125,000 square feet of glass. As it turns out, it's the world's largest installation of molded and cast glass in the US. But it was because of our innovation and technology that we were able to really prevail when it came to the other products that were being tried to imitate us. And so we won the contract, and it sets us up for further export because of that.
Well, that's a great highlight, how when you have quality products, innovation, the world finds you and makes you international, makes you global. Susie, how did you get your start?
Hello, everybody. I'm pleased to be invited at this panel. So my start in international trade started quite late. I was a 20-year marketing veteran. So I worked in Canada as a marketing executive and consumer packaged goods. So on brands that we all know, at Procter & Gamble and Frito-Lay and Weight Watchers. And then at age 50, I read a book that was called The Big Fat Surprise. And it explained that we were all misled, that fats were indeed good and sugar was the culprit in the 1960s. I was a little bit, I was furious and I wanted to get the word out. So I knew that we didn't need another book written because a whole bunch of doctors were writing books. And I figured, well, what I'm good at is building brands. So I will launch a brand. So that's kind of how it went. I decided on this standing room table to put my life savings. I was a single mom with my 2 kids and decided to launch a brand. Started in Canada in September 2017. I lived in the health food stores doing demos and at the natural shows, having people try my business, my new brand, and it worked really, really well. So it didn't take long that the stores in Canada were all calling, the larger banners and the Walmarts and Costco's of the world. And then in the US, the natural stores, the Whole Foods, and then the larger banners were all calling, which is how I dipped my toe into international. So it's not easy for a Canadian startup to sell and be successful into the US and maneuver through that. And that was, that's been the last 5 years. So it's been quite an exciting 5 years. And now I've stepped aside from the CEO role, and I'm helping a lot of other companies find their way through international trade.
Oh, what a great story, going from building brands to building your own brand. That's really taking it the last mile. So that's so exciting, and so many brands now are going immediately global, and so that's a great story. So the next question I want to ask of our panelists, And this is something that's been on everyone's mind is, how has COVID impacted trade? And also, how has it impacted women in trade? So it's kind of a two-part question, but I'd like to go back to Ingrid and ask for your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I guess it's pretty obvious how COVID has impacted, not just in the decrease in aggregate demand in any country, accompanied by the increase in the logistic cost. Just if we think about the nationwide or citywide lockdown and how people's earnings have been reduced. Ay, do you hear me? Leti, pon tu micrófono. And we can see the clear effects of the COVID pandemic. However, the remarkable part here to highlight is how women have been the most affected, because just imagine, the share of women in informal employment exceeds the share of men in a majority of countries. So we are talking about the 55%, for example, that women in the whole world are engaged in activities that cannot be done remotely or employed in sectors that were highly exposed to international travel restrictions. So if we are thinking about that, then we realize that women are disproportionately present in the informal sector. Imagine just in low-income countries, 92% of women are in the informal employment. In lower middle income countries, the proportions are going to the 83%, according to the International Labour Organization. Moreover, they are represented, or let's say they are overrepresented, working in healthcare systems, continue to do the majority care work in households, and facing increased risk of violence, exploitation, domestic abuse, especially during the quarantine. So said that, the OECD has observed that existing gender gaps in education, information technology skills, income, access to finance, and family child care responsibilities have put women in an increased disadvantage during the COVID-19 pandemic. And just to finalize my comments here, I would like to say that imagine that 65% of women compose the workforce in the sectors that have been really hit by the pandemic, such as manufacturing, apparel, for example, apparel, footwear, textiles, and some others that have been really hit by this pandemic. So that's exactly what I could say.
Boy, a lot to think about, because we often don't think about these influences through the pandemic. Jan, some of your thoughts?
Yes, as my job, I operate as a customs broker, a licensed customs broker, and a freight forwarder. So our company, as soon as COVID hit 2 years ago, went from totally working in the office to 72 hours, we went remote. And we were able to do it. It was through a lot of hard work, but we worked remotely. So I'm going to kind of focus on how I feel like COVID is going to affect women in the future. The United States, they did a lot of things, like if you were laid off, they paid you an additional amount of unemployment, which kind of resulted in a lot of women could make as much money sitting home as they could, drawing unemployment, as they could going back to work. So that's what they chose to do. The US subsidized daycare. So many of the women decided to stay home. As a company, we actually are finding it difficult to find employees who want to work, because everyone wants a remote job. That's what they want to do. Our industry can be worked remotely. Many cannot, but ours fortunately can. My concern with women is our company is giving women 2 to 3 days a week that they can work remotely. When you work remotely, you lose that opportunity to learn, like the water cooler learning, standing there talking to people. You lose visibility to the decision makers. You just lose that. And women who have children have to make a decision. Do I want to focus on my career, Or do I want to say, okay, I don't expect to get raises and go further and things like that. So I just want to work and raise my children. So that we've never been faced with that opportunity before. I don't know what I would have done. What I hope is that we will be like Letitia and like Susie and say, okay, I can work from home, but I'm going to start my own industry. So that's my concern about COVID and its effect on women.
That's so interesting. So it's really about both opportunity, but some social challenges as well in terms of career. Carol, your thoughts?
And, I sort of looked at this question and thought, where do I start? So I thought I'd look back, not forward, because later on we're going to be looking forward, and look back at the 2008 recession, global financial crisis, and how it impacted trade and women in business, because it certainly did. And I'm sure some of you lived this. Overnight, we found that people were buying less, manufacturers were producing less, product lines were being rationalized or discontinued, people were laid off, demand declined, and there was a ripple effect for the supply chain, and companies were canceling projects and reconsidering priorities. Sources of financing dried up, and again, that particularly affected women entrepreneurs, and the world of global trade for people who wanted to expand their vision and their work became more difficult. So it was anticipated then that many businesses would fail to meet their financial obligations, impeding their ability to trade and move goods across borders, and that certainly happened. So these same financial impacts were felt as a result of COVID-19 and the global pandemic. There's no doubt about that. But things were different with COVID-19, and in a terrible way. And we've certainly heard some of these social impacts that are so important for everybody with respect to dealing with COVID-19. People were at the heart of the pandemic, with fear for their health and that of their families and communities, and perhaps especially women. So government policy not only had to bolster the economy and come up with the financial solutions, but it had to try to contain the impact of disease. In the sense of the world I live in, with moving goods across borders, it had to provide immediate priority for trade in things like medical supplies, masks, PPE, vaccines, with very specific requirements for getting vaccines to market for those countries which in fact had supplies of vaccines, and even for food on grocery shelves. We saw empty shelves, all kinds of social dislocation from that point of view, coming from fear that we didn't necessarily have to the same extent with the earlier global financial recession. People were working remotely, and again, we've heard about impacts of that. Travel was restricted, if not impossible. So when I reflect on the lessons that I've learned about the trade, how trade has been impacted, and women in particular, I'll just share three things. Number one is how we move goods, and thinking about how we move goods. I don't think I realized before now that a significant percentage of the world's cargo is carried by passenger planes. As soon as those planes were grounded, that capacity disappeared overnight. The other point is when things went wrong, and things did go wrong. Few governments had plans for crisis management or business continuity, and the same was true of business. So who could have imagined a pandemic? Who could have planned for a pandemic? Well, the plans weren't there. And the third thing really does relate to a subject at the heart of women in business, which is SMEs. What about SMEs? We know that many SMEs, a majority of SMEs perhaps, are owned and managed by women, and many SMEs struggled and failed quickly with the pandemic. Some shifted to a different way of accessing and serving customers, and that was the even greater ballooning of e-commerce than we had previously seen, with resulting exponential growth. And the difficulty there is that some customs administrations are still overwhelmed by the challenge of managing risk with e-commerce and collecting revenue from e-commerce. So again, those were some of the things that I thought were specifically COVID impacts for trade and for women in business.
Well, and thank you for mentioning the connection of not only small business, small and medium-sized business, but the connection between our women entrepreneurs and those small and medium-sized businesses. You know, we often forget about those impacts, and sometimes our policies don't consider all the communities that we serve. So Letitia, how has COVID impacted?
Well, COVID impacted women, I think, in many ways. But for years, we have spoken about how can we manage this thing of continue being a professional, making business, and look for the equilibrium at home. And I think that something good that pandemic brought us was all these digital platforms to get many things: education, training. In my personal case, I was able to even close business and got 2 regional supermarket chains online. So when I realized how useful and powerful are these digital platforms for women and how they can help very high educated women to stay in the market labor force and not to make this special decision when having kids, and continue combining these 2 very important personal personal development that I think most women would like to have. I think in that way, the pandemic showed us that it is possible. So I think it was the best, the good thing that I can see from that. What is something that is not so good? We work more hours a day. We were available almost all time for appointments, for courses, for training, but maybe women are able to take and accept this trade-off to stay and take care of their families. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's such an important perspective. You know, we often think about digital commerce, but you know, this whole pandemic brought us digital, you know, in terms of our communication. So that's interesting. Jane, what are your perspectives?
Well, it's a little bit of a personal story, I think, just what I experienced. Because we are an essential company in construction, we remained open, but I took the opportunity to move back to my home office on a more full-time basis. It also allowed me to recover from serious back surgery during that time. But it also resulted in some other aha moments and changes that I think were really positive. You know, the silver lining, as Camille was talking about before, there are lots of silver linings in this. I discovered that without me being present, it allowed some of my staff to really rise to the occasion and shine. And so people got to really evolve in their positions and learn more and take over some of those duties and responsibilities that I no longer had access to and just reported. So it also really helped reduce my level of stress. For some reason, kind of out of sight, out of mind, what I didn't see going on kind of was, you know, just not there. And that was a big relief to me because I started this almost 50 years ago. So it's you know, continue to pile on in a sort of a way. And as we get older, I think it's a little more difficult to deal with some of those stressors that used to really excite me and challenge me. So that was another aha. The other, in our industry, and you know, interior design organizations had a lot of seminars. So it was educational, but it also allowed me to connect with a lot of contacts and people I hadn't seen other than at some shows or events. And so that was many times, or several times at least, during a week that we could connect with each other and really get to enjoy each other's, not just our company, but you know, share tips and information and those sorts of things. It made me more productive. And I think in a way, I'm almost embarrassed to admit, but it was beneficial in those ways. So yeah, just my own.
Well, and this very event's sort of a demonstration of how you can socialize in a real innovative, important way. Susie, how did COVID impact you?
Yeah, COVID was really, really challenging for us. So we were a hyper growth brand. So I launched in September 2017, selling, $5,000 the first month, and then $50,000 a month. And then after a year, $1 million a month, and then in year two, $7 million a month. So we for Canadian standards of food launches, it's pretty insane. So 8 million the first 12 months, and then 47 million. So we were on a hyper growth rocket ship, like a few US brands you've seen exit. And we were just launching into the US. So as COVID hit in February, we had just been listed and being on the shelves in 15 to 18,000 doors in the US. So as a marketer, you're launching a brand in the US. There's a lot of brands that have failed launching into the US, much stronger brands than a little Canadian food startup with a grandiose mission. And then we kind of got hit in three different ways. Like one is, we're a low sugar option and a high fat option. So people just started eating banana bread again, and they put their keto diet on the shelf and just indulge in comfort food for 6 months. And I think in the first 12 months put on something like 29 pounds. So, people were not kind of being careful about the sugar and the carbs. Number two is we're an on-the-go snack. You grab the snack, you go to the gym, you go to the office, and on-the-go just got shut down for the last 2 years. And then number three, the gift to startups and women have more than half of the food startups in Canada and the US. The gift is the natural health food stores that allow you discovery. So they put all these small new brands, they put you on the front of the store, they put you on a rack. I've personally gone and met 85 of the Whole Foods store staff and said, "Hey, I'm Susie," and showed them the picture on the box and said, "Thank you for having us in your stores." And I went to Sprouts. That gift of discovery, because you're competing against the big billion-dollar brands, you don't have anymore. So from a brand momentum, we got hit in a tremendous way. We were kind of rocket ship, double, and that got slowed down in a big way. Then becomes challenging to spend your marketing awareness and trial dollars with, everyone in the world pulled back. So it basically made it very challenging to keep growing. So we had to, the P word, we had to pivot like everybody else. In terms of our strategies, of course, the strategies of fundraising, keeping our employees safe, keeping our supply chain safe, and protecting our cash were all in place. So it impacted us in many ways, but it's certainly, been heartbreaking for those who follow all the founders on LinkedIn. The last 2 years has been devastating. The amount of shutdowns of brands in the on-the-go categories, and the amount of brands that just couldn't raise the funding to keep going. It's all been very heartbreaking for this world of, of us women who want to start brands because we have a mission.
Well, and I hope our audience is taking notes, especially from two perspectives. One is the growth that you're describing is not easy to manage. So I just applaud you for your ability to grow a brand and grow a company like that, but also to have the resilience to do those pivots. And when we talk about resilience, one of the chief tools of resilience is having, resources that you rely on. So that kind of leads to our next question. And I'll start again with Ingrid is, well, what are some resources that you rely on to enhance and keep you competitive in global markets?
Definitely my team, my people. Definitely my team, because they were my priority at the end and at the beginning and at the end of the pandemics. Another important resources that we had to jump in, it was digitalization, you know, and try to get all our processes into the digital world, including trade missions, including our hiring platforms that, to be really honest, in my life was aware of those. You know, I mean, from internationalist to expert in IT, it was a completely long jump. And getting into the development of this IT or telecommunication, this has facilitated remote work and operations. So that's exactly why I come in now with you, you know, being in Dubai. And that is exactly how we can continue working for other countries now, up to now 21 countries, being in different and in different time zones or in different regions. So I will put that as well, education, because as I said at the beginning, has been always one of my top 3 resolutions to continue educating myself and my people. Training is very important and networks are very important. So I will conclude with this.
Yeah, our people are so important, our teams. Jan.
Okay, I'm going to focus on the positive that came out of COVID, and it's this. Being able to meet with webinars, being able to talk with people, being able to, instead of, okay, is your schedule, can I go see you on Monday or Tuesday? That's impossible. We have 8 offices in our company, and I used to travel to all the offices under risk management. Now I can just call a meeting. I can call a meeting with the managers. I can get them together. I can do training. I can have all of our import people get together. In fact, our company started making games. We played like Family Feud, the import department against the export department. And company and people that in Savannah that had never met anyone in Knoxville, all of a sudden became good friends. So it was extremely positive in that way. As the NCBFAA, I was elected president in March of 2 years ago. So I was thrown completely into this. We had to operate like we've never been before. We had held virtual conferences. But we did hold virtual meetings, and we were able to meet with customs on a regular basis. I mean, just a phone call could be arranged. Everyone had the time to arrange that. We were able to make, I think, 70 or 80 legislative calls with our congressmen and our senators. It was amazing what we got done during that time. We virtually, in the past 2 years, we've had a board meeting every Friday, which normally we only had 4 times a year. So we got so much done virtually. I do miss we are going back to the regular meetings, and I am looking forward to that. But, I think what it's going to come out with is that we continue to use these resources. Now, people have been overzealous when you have 10 to 20, hours of meetings a day. But I feel like there's been a lot of positive that we hope to continue to utilize.
Well, and I think one of the things you highlighted that was interesting is the whole idea of getting a hold of external stakeholders, whether they're suppliers, government agencies. Those types of meetings are often hard to arrange physically, and a lot of times much easier in the digital platform. So Carol, what are some resources you rely on?
It's not only the resources that I've relied on or my organization has relied on, but it's also the obligation we felt throughout the pandemic to share information when we knew we had information and we knew we had access to people, so that again, we could reach people with information about the pandemic, where 700 people would be on a webinar, for example, about a complex technical subject where that would have been impossible in the in-person world. So again, like Jan, trying to look at the glass half full. So collaboration is incredibly important, and I'm a huge champion for the value of associations and networks. So I think that, and again, the entrepreneurs in the group may disagree, but I think that individual competitive advantages are quite short-lived in this world we live in. And I feel that there's greater power in sustainability and collective action. That could be within industry sectors, it could be nationally, it could be across borders. And certainly some of my experience during the pandemic, again, in the context of resources, bore that out for me personally. I've also been part of the private sector consultative group at the World Customs Organization, 27 companies and international organizations around a table advising the Secretary General of the WCO on standardization, harmonization, digital practices, all of the things that were so key during the pandemic. We had meetings with the WCO on a weekly basis. Again, that kind of outreach, and we felt an obligation to pass along some of the things that we learned from those. For example, it's not just about moving goods, it's also about moving crews who are involved with conveyances, whether those are airplanes or whether those are other kinds of vehicles or vessels. What about those protocols on vaccines? What about skyrocketing transportation costs? And we are going to talk a little bit about port congestion in the next question, I think. But this was so far-reaching for people, for countries, that idea of collaboration and sharing was critical during the pandemic. We kept very close to our association members over this time, both in Canada and internationally, but we also kept, again, that open mind to be inclusive of organizations we may not have reached out to in the past. And certainly one of those was our Canadian Association of Small Business. And again, which we knew was struggling. We would see news reports almost every evening in terms of the COVID impact on small business. So, again, those are some of the resources that we relied upon in terms of the privilege we had to access some of the information that people needed to move goods across borders, but also our obligation in terms of outreach when we knew we had resources that would be of use to others, and that willingness to go back to collaboration in terms of people building relationships. The world is all about people and relationships. And again, the kind of information that we could share and how we could share leveraging some of the new not new technologies, but the technologies that were being widely used by many people.
Well, and I think your remarks really highlight the importance of organizations like OWIT that allow you to socialize your challenges, socialize our problems, and that's so important. As entrepreneurs, we're not in a silo for sure. So Leticia, what are some resources that you've relied on?
Okay, let me tell you that our brand was founded very late, 2018. And for 1 year long, we built everything that has to do with a good and trustable product. And I think that is the main source that make us successful during pandemic. Our product has very international certifications, is healthy, it has a very clear traceability, and it meets all legal requirements to get export. So for 1 year long, 2018, we did not even sell 1 liter of honey. We arrived to supermarket chain, the first, in the middle of 2019, few months before the pandemic. But I think we did a very good work during these 6 months because we were doing testing inside supermarket stores, very intensive. We also discovered the way to communicate to our customers and how to make them conscious about our values as a brand that is looking for responsible consumer, that take care of environment, that take care of health, that is always looking for products that are trustable. So when pandemic arrives, I can tell you that we had some experience that we moved on digital platforms. So everything we were doing in presence, we did on platforms. We did tasting, we did following to our clients. And there was something very important that we were benefit and has to do with something that Carol said, collaboration. Collaboration among actors, different actors, economic actors were crucial for us. And I'm going to give you 3 examples, very specific. One, There is a Mexican National Association of Supermarkets and Department Stores. It's called ANTAD. They have this agreement with local government of the state of Mexico, SEDECO, and they organize these private online meetings between buyers and local producers. As a result, I got 2 regional supermarket chains as clients, one of them H-E-B Mexico. So this is one example of good collaboration between private sector and local government. Second example, the local government of my state, SEDECO, the federal government, Secretaría de Economía, and OWIT Mexico, Ingrid Orozco. They make us possible to be at Gold Food and Expo Dubai 2020. From there, we don't just got knowledge, we have so many contacts, chambers of commerce, retailers, food service. So now we are working to get into the Arab Emirates. Third specific example, the Association of Imports and Exports, ANER, in collaboration with, again, my local government, the state of Mexico, they gave us the opportunity to be in a trade commercial mission to the United States. And because of that, we are now at Central Market by H-E-B. So I think there are 3 examples that I can say collaboration works. So let's continue doing that.
That's great. And it highlights how during the pandemic, we had to figure out all these innovative ways to touch and stay connected with our customers. So that's very good. Jane, what are some resources that you have relied on?
Well, I have a lot of resources that I'm going to share in just one second, but spontaneously, I just want to emphasize what I'm hearing here, and that's about the collaboration and coordination and how we now support each other as women. You kind of have an idea. I started in glass in the early 70s. It was a man's world. It was the first woman to get a contractor's license. And the landscape was much, much different at that time. And we struggled as women to just, get ahead. And we struggled, and it was hard enough for us to stay up there without and wanting to help and promote other women along, but it was really difficult. But what I have seen over the years now, I'm so excited about, is that we are much more inclusive. We embrace each other. We want to mentor the younger ones coming up. And now we have also many more options when we go to do our purchasing or when we seek advice. There are women out there in all realms, fortunately, that we can collaborate with, which was not the case when I began. So I just want to emphasize this feeling of kumbaya, not just kumbaya, but that we really have substantial women of, great ability and influence with whom we can collaborate. So I'm excited about that. So some of my resources that I've used, it was kind of organic how they evolved, because as I started to do business outside of the country, I accessed other resources, some of which were local organizational events and trade conferences and so forth. And those were put on by a variety of services and organizations. I did rely on numerous LA conferences, as I mentioned, but one that US Commercial Service and Julianne Hennessy was fabulous. US Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration. I gained a lot of information and used them as resources for information. The Export-Import Bank was really helpful to us as we began, because without getting into a long story, you need funds to begin a project. And the Export-Import Bank was able to give us a loan that we used and paid back well before the project was even complete. But the funds for this mobilization phase of the project was really helpful. And International Trade Administration and also XM or CMTC and Elizabeth Glynn, who is now Export Strategy and Operations Advisor with EMG Global Solutions. She was just a wealth of information and able to direct me in a variety of ways. And but one of the also Krieger Freight Forwarder, who's one of our sponsors today, they did a tremendous amount of service for us in terms of just getting our goods moved, and it was very, very successful. One of the biggest assets for our success was a very, very savvy and engaged international attorney, David Habib. He helped me. I don't know what would have happened without him. So having those resources and those people with the information and services were really, really important. So is my
well, and one of the things I want to highlight with that too is all of those organizations you mentioned. I have a daughter I have 4 daughters. One wanted to get into international trade, and it's those organizations you mentioned that had female leaders that helped my daughter get into international trade. So those are not only organizations that represent important trade resources, but they're also organizations that also represent some amazing women's leadership in trade as well. And you know, we all forget that we're all mentors here and how important that is. Susie, your thoughts on some resources?
Yeah, for sure. The resources were really key. As we kind of chat a little bit, female founders is a big force in Canada and the US. So one of the things that happened is just a natural organic way to get together. It really started with a couple of female founders reaching out and saying, you know, I'm raising money, I need help. I have, you know, a board, you know, looking for a board member, looking for an employees. And really in the last couple months, it's went from, you know, 20 a year ago where we had this network and now we couldn't get together anymore in person. So it forced us to say, okay, well, maybe we kind of set some sort of networking up. And right now we have about 200 founders, mostly Canadian, but not all, that just are, you know, I've just kind of got this all together on Teams, and we're going to start having a network to help and share and put resources. It's always hard to kind of get these things going and keep them going because there's so many support groups, but this one really started organic with a lot of kind of very similar needs and challenges through COVID. You know, how do you sample now that, you know, you can't sample pieces anymore? So that's kind of one bucket. The other bucket we've discussed a few times, but essentially, you know, we've all figured out and learned that you can work remote, which has made a huge difference for startups and entrepreneurs, because my first 3 years I was on the road. I saw my kids, you know, less than half the time, my partner less than half the time. I was traveling. And it's tough to be traveling. So you have, you know, a 4-day business trip for a 25-minute meeting with Walmart, you know, depending where you live. And now the world allowed us to kind of spend more time in higher value meetings than just traveling. Now, I think we're all looking forward to going back in person. And I was at the Natural Product Expo West show. So if anyone watched, you know, followed my posts on LinkedIn, you'll see how excited I was and the energy of that show, and having a chance, you know, after 3 years to hug your retailers, your friends and your colleagues. I mean, is incomparable. But that being said, you know, we had to tap into different resources between each other, how we interact as a team in a company, and then how we tap into different marketing mix elements as we start driving the brands again.
Well, I love how you've taken the opportunity to coordinate and network with other women founders, and that's so important. You know, for anyone listening, there's not enough venture capital for our women founders, period. And those are missed opportunities. Those are missed opportunities for investors. So it's just thrilling to hear that you're doing that kind of work.
Yeah, well, follow me on LinkedIn because that's the #1 topic. And our first kickoff meeting is how to help get funding. So let's connect on LinkedIn.
Okay, so this fourth question, I know it's a challenge because 2 minutes, we could do a whole nother program on this. But on top of mind, if you're in international trade, is the whole subject of port congestion and disruptions in the supply chain. And it monopolized a lot of time on television and news reports. We saw, I'm based in LA, so we all saw worldwide the pictures of hundreds of ships anchored waiting to get in. So just some of your perspectives on that and how you've dealt with those supply chain and port congestion issues. So Ingrid?
Well, in my case, I haven't directly dealt with that. However, my clients have done it, and how I realized they have tackled this situation is improving local manufacturing, or getting or trying to get more efficient into investment in new technologies, for example, but also being part of international agreements to facilitate trade. For example, being part of global logistic passports, among other agreements. So that I could say about that, because at the end of the day, they have to become creative and try to fix the solution. And even if you cannot find, because it's so expensive to bring this product from this country, let's create a similar product here, or let's invest in our innovation, in our local manufacturing. And that's how I've seen they have tackled this situation, right?
Oh, great. Well, and again, we have representatives from 3 countries that produce so many quality goods and services and can be an alternative to some of those disrupted supply chains. Jan, how have you dealt with the port congestion issue?
As quickly as I can. I believe with COVID, people started ordering things, everything, toilet paper, PPE, dresses, whatever they could. They sat on their couch and ordered things. I don't think that's going to stop. So that just kind of increased all of our freight coming in. And that, coupled with the fact that some people couldn't get to work, they decided not to work. We had congestion with ground handlers, with people that are loading and unloading the cargo and things like that. And so, it just compounded both in the air and inland and ocean arena. And so what we found was the ports weren't set up to store that much. So it just, LA, the port of LA can only grow so much. It's in the middle of the city. So, ports had to gather different things. I believe it's coming, it's going to improve. I do not believe that that people are going to stop ordering. I think that they found that that's a lot easier, and they're going to continue to order, and they're going to be okay if it takes 5 to 7 days or even 2 weeks as opposed to 1 day. They're going to get back used to that. In the United States, are representing our clients, imports of goods went from $2,000 a container to $20,000 a container. In addition, their cargo stayed at ports 30 days. They couldn't get their cargo, yet they were charged demurrage and detention. The NCBFAA, we are talking to the commissioners and to legislators about not being charged demurrage when the client cannot pick up the cargo. And that would seem to be logical, but we have some very interesting challenges in the United States to change the law so that importers and exporters aren't faced with these huge astronomical costs.
Yeah, it's simply unprecedented, the costs that have hit the supply chain for sure. Carol, some of your perspectives on the port congestion issue.
Yeah, and again, here to Jan for raising issues. In my perspective, we get back to people in lockdown. So if it took people to move things, whether that was containers on docks or goods in warehouses, well, they just didn't move. So again, not a positive situation. But I want to talk about two Canadian situations in particular. One was thanks to Mother Nature, where in the middle of all this, in the pandemic, we had the collapse of highway infrastructure in British Columbia after torrential storms. Shipments had to be diverted to and from the United States, which wasn't anticipated. There was no direct route from the west coast of Canada to the central and eastern parts of Canada, and it's not a seamless process. So there had to be temporary import bonds. There had to be additional mechanisms put in place. Again, additional cost, additional delay. And many of these were for Canadian companies that never shipped to the US. They were just trying to get their goods from Canada, one part of Canada to another. So that was a huge impact for Canadians. So that was Mother Nature. The second challenge that we've had, and again, you may have seen this on the news, is thanks to human nature, when a small group of non-vaccinated truckers in Canada who couldn't get into the United States because of vaccine requirements occupied our national capital for several weeks and blockaded border crossings from time to time, including shutting down the legendary Ambassador Bridge between Windsor and Detroit. I mean, there were other border crossings shut in British Columbia, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, and in Ontario. And as a result of that, some US trucking firms declined even to pick up northbound loads because of uncertainty. And we all know that business hates uncertainty. And this was unprecedented, and I think made us all think about border security in a way that we hadn't thought of border security before. It reinforced the importance of communication and back to collaboration with our Border Services Agency and with other government agencies, especially for perishable goods, which were affected again in that particular situation. So again, port congestion was very real. We had a couple of other situations in Canada that really required collaboration, but that no doubt increased cost ultimately to the consumer.
Well, and thank you for highlighting too, we think about the seaports, but the massive amount of trade that's going through the borders, either between US-Mexico and Canada, even a small hiccup in that supply chain causes some major impacts. Letitia, so did the port congestion affect you, and how?
If there is somebody, small business from Mexico, listen to me, they will recognize this. We faced as a country a big scarcity of glass jars. Imagine that you are a small business and it is a main input for you and you don't have enough inventory. It becomes really a fight to get glass jar. The way we face this problem was strengthening the dialogue with our suppliers to be aware of products arriving. So as much as they receive a shipment, they were calling us and they were buying the product. We built a web of suppliers inside the country at a higher cost, but still profitable. We increased our inventory of essential and not essential inputs, and we maintain our fill rate as a 100%. It was a very good, we were benefit because we have a credit line ready to buy product as soon as they arrive. Not many small business have this opportunity. And I would like to say that we keep an open dialogue with our clients. So we could we will increase our inventory with closed eyes, but it is not true. A small business in Mexico, they do not have access to have a dialogue with retailers. You are judged as much as strict as a big company. You are expected to have a 100% fill rate, and it doesn't matter if you are a small business and nobody told you that there was going to be a peak in the demand. So what we did was we construct forecast, statistics, data with the electronic portal that we have access. It's not the best information, but it's the information we have. So in that way, we could be ready for scarcity of glass jar. And I think there is a very room of improve with retailers. They have to think different when they are dealing with a small business. They have at least to have an open dialogue with us and tell us, and for example, one option, you may think about a new, you may think about substitute for a new type of glass, what is available, but they are not open to this kind of arrangements. They have the photo in their catalog and they expect that you give the same photo that you promised to have. And sometimes for a small business, it's not so easy to make this approach to the buyer. So I think there is something really wrong in this relationship between retailers and small business in Mexico. And if there is somebody from UNTAD listening to us, please take this opportunity to improve.
Well, what I think you mentioned, something that is a real important issue is with the supply chain disruptions, even though many of us could pivot and go to different suppliers, go to slightly different suppliers for packaging or inputs for our goods, that doesn't mean that if we're dealing business with a large retailer that they're going to accept that, right? So that's a challenge with a lot of medium and small sized businesses. So that's so important that you mentioned that, and also highlighting how small businesses have to really look at their strategies too. Jane, did the port congestion affect you, and how? And I'm looking for Jane. I don't know. I think we may have lost her. So we'll wait till she comes back. Susie, how has the port congestion affected you?
Very similarly, and I'm shocked as to how a business in Canada and a business in the US and Mexico seems we have exactly all the same challenges. The port in all of the challenges initially were we had to get supply, so it was a mad dash, to with our co-man and us calling directly our ingredient suppliers, our jar suppliers, our packaging suppliers, and begging to kind of book in advance. Two things that are really important: time and money. So the world instantly went to, you need longer lead times. What took three weeks to get for packaging labels are now taking 8 and 12. And money. Everyone wants money up front, and costs went through the roof. So time and money, those are two killers for startups. The lack of flexibility of the larger chains is real. And, I don't know, we didn't have this, but I don't know how the larger chains or stores have been flexible with ingredient changes. So if you're a small company and you can't get a certain ingredient in a certain part of the world and you swap it for another and you can change your label in time, in small natural stores, that's okay. Big chains, like pre-COVID, is like a no-no, right? You got to go present, you got to go, get all formal approval. So there's not the flexibility that we've been hearing about, like change this, change that. When you're in the big leagues, you got to ask permission before you make changes. So I don't know if there's been more, we're hearing FDA and retailers being a bit more flexible with, of course, your label has to be compliant, but it's time and money. So if you're a smaller company, we have the ability to react quicker and make label changes and make decisions way, way quicker. But it costs money, like you kind of have to have the cash. So I think a lot of the conversations comes back when you're a startup, cash is queen. And in this time of supply, everything was constrained. It just forced us to make, really tough decisions. We lost some sales, everything's costing more, longer lead times, your cash flow gets stretched much longer before you get paid. It's all exacerbating all of the challenges we already had prior to COVID and just amplifying everything.
Well,
It's
and And I'm sure, Susie, you're getting a lot of nods from the audience, because certainly all this in my trade career, all of this has resonated with me big time. Another issue that I want to get to is, we've got representatives from 3 countries here. So we couldn't have a program like this without weighing in on the free trade agreement between all 3 countries, USMCA, T-MEC, and CUSMA. So I wanted to get some of your perspectives on it. So back to Ingrid.
Yeah, what could I say about the CMA or the T-MEC, for how we call it in Mexico, is that it's a great access, to a market of more or less 366 million of inhabitants. From those, 51% are women. So that's very, very important. So what I could say as well is that Mexico is the 7th largest exporter in the world and the first one in Latin America. And this agreement is not one of the most important ones that we have as a country, but also the one that is geopolitically and geographically more a natural market. Our companies, 90% of our companies are exporting first to United States, second to, to other countries. So Mexico, as you probably know, has 14 free trade agreements with 50 countries, getting Mexico as well for the other 2 countries as they get away to the world, as they get away to half of the world. That is also important. So, and finally, this is an amazing opportunity for SMEs and women-owned companies to integrate themselves into the regional global value chain to generate prosperity and hemispheric security. So I would stop on that, my comments about that.
Great. Jan.
Okay, our association was well involved with USMCA with, giving comments and everything. And we do feel like it's resulted in a more balanced and reciprocal trade, and does support high-paying jobs and growth for North American economy. It's going to be, slower going because of COVID, but we will get there. But I would like to know, U.S. Customs worked closely with us, and they gave us like an informed compliance period so that we can make sure that we did what we needed to do. We had some technicalities we had to get through, but as mentioning CBP, I just want to say that CBP has created a law enforcement leadership and legacy alliance program for women. It creates a forum for female officers to meet monthly, discuss challenges, and cultivating female empowerment. So I do want to say our Customs Border Patrol agents, most all of Customs is embracing female leaders and making progress towards affecting that.
Great. And Carol.
I'm going to abbreviate my comments because I'm really anxious to hear perspectives on the future of trade, which is the last question, and just say a couple of very brief things. CUSMA made it simpler to use the free trade agreement. There's no doubt that change was a positive one, but the most positive thing I hear about it is, and I hear this from traders around the world, relates to certification of origin. We got this one right with this agreement. The agreement removed the need for a separate certificate of origin, which was provided by and again, usually in hard copy, provided by the exporter or the producer by certification of origin, which is a set of minimum data elements which can be provided electronically, and it can be provided by the importer. So I hear about this from people in Asia. I hear about this from people with other trade agreements as the standard for any trade agreements that are being discussed, that idea of certification with data elements rather and electronic provision of that certification rather than a certificate of origin requirements as they always used to be.
Hey, Letitia.
I have seen lately, I was in Dubai, I was in Panama, and they both have these programs to get closer to the place of consumption. We are right next to United States, to Canada. We are a bloc, very good blocks. We have to take advantage of this free trade that enhances commerce. as a small business and women in a small business, we have to study very much the legal requirements that they still have to fulfill. I tell you because I am in food business, so I have to fulfill FDA. But once you do, it really is, and it has to do with healthy certainty. It must be like that. But in other way, it's really easy to get into the market. You just have to study and learn how to do it. And I encourage you to try to cross borders, women in my country, prepare a good product, high quality, international certifications, and get to the adventure. It's really, it gives you a lot of pleasure.
Great. And Susie, your perspectives.
I think overall, in terms of the trade and opening up different opportunities for us around the world, these type of groups are really, really helping. You know, I'm listening to this conference and I'm like, okay, how do we get into Mexico at first and foremost, right? Like it's just a container away. So I think it's kind of really key to continue to have this type of support. I know I'm helping a lot of founders and a lot are asking me how to get into the US. So I definitely want to talk to Carol and to Jan in terms of the border support, because the world has just got way, way more challenging and I need some help. I have some friends in Ecuador who need some help. So I think these type of events are going to really help open up doors. Not long ago, you really thought when you started a brand, you could just, you know, you were kind of stuck in Canada and it just took big companies to take it outside of Canada. So I'm very much looking forward to staying in touch and keep opening up doors.
Great. And so now we're to the last question. And so if I could get, you know, sort of brief comments, because I want to leave some time for a few questions at least, is could you give us your perspective on the future of trade? So Ingrid?
Yes, well, what I could say now that is also very important to consider is that future of trade is already being created by people and machines working together, not in competition. Traders around the world find themselves, you know, having to adapt quickly to all the artificial intelligence things or emerging technologies. They are moving to automation, and we don't really need to be scared about that. Now, technological improvements have the potential to increase efficiency and opening up new markets. Technologies like blockchain will impact for sure, and have started to get an impact. You know, I can see it here, for example, in Dubai. The last time that I was in the Museum of the Future, how really we need to learn how to work with machines together. You know, I was impressed how a robot was creating my coffee, for example. So, but without forgetting on making sure supply chains are sustainable, because besides the effects of the pandemics, but it's important to maintain this communication, this human to human, that at the end of the day, this is the most important part. So I will conclude with that.
Great. Jan, your perspectives.
I have 2 pages of notes. I'm going to condense them. Our challenges in the United States are countries, the Russian sanctions, the China tariffs, things like that. So different countries that we work with complying with the laws of those countries, very focused on IPR property rights, protecting those, very focused on forced labor. And so that the United States regulations and laws are one of the future of trade. Definitely technology using blockchain or distributing ledger, continuing education. We are this close to requiring continuing education for customs brokers, which would help us educate importers and exporters on countries and where to go and how to sell their product and et cetera. And I want to leave with 2 short stories. One is I've seen a lot of women break the glass ceiling and then they close it up to other women. So be careful of that. And the last story is, I love this one. I want you to all remember this and think about this. I had the fortune of meeting Carol West at a conference, and we were having a glass of wine and we were talking about things. And I was so impressed with Carol, always has been. Her demeanor, her confidence, her communication skills, everything were just impeccable. So impressed. I'm like, you know, and she was talking about women and children and, you know, closing themselves off in their country and not going globally or not thinking globally or internationally. And I said, oh, I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I should send her to live with you for a couple of weeks. And her response was, oh, please do. And I stopped. I said, I'm serious. And Carol said, so am I. And so I sent my 14-year-old daughter and a friend to live with Carol in Canada for 2 weeks. It was amazing transition. If you can take that kind of dedication to help other women, women's children, whomever, Carol West is the epitome of supporting and uplifting women in international trade. So I will end with that.
And Carol.
I don't know how to begin after that. Thank you, Jan. It gave much more to me, I'm sure, than to Heather, who just had a baby on the weekend. So that shows how many years have passed. But it was my pleasure entirely. So perspective on the future of trade, I think to describe how I'm feeling is hopeful without feeling completely positive. So we've got some distance to get to recovery, but we are learning lessons every day, including today, about our interconnectedness. It has been great to see the experience between entrepreneurs and between the customs folks on these panels. Sadly, though, one of our most important lessons is as a result of the war in Ukraine and the impact of trade sanctions which have been imposed. So what will recovery look like regionally and globally, especially with adjustments to global supplies of oil and gas? I think resilience now means something completely different than it did just a month ago. So that's one thought. When we used to talk about business not liking uncertainty, we used to think, how long will my shipment be delayed at the border? I don't like that uncertainty of delivery. And now we think about things like cyber attacks. That's uncertainty. That's uncertainty for governments. It's uncertainty for business. And I think that's a part of the future of trade. And I know Ingrid has talked a lot about automation and technology. And I think we have to be increasingly vigilant about cyber attacks and the supply chain. I think that our best chance for constructive, sustainable recovery is to work together as women and as people involved in trade. And I've jotted down 4 priorities that are really sort of best practices we can think about, or that I should think about every day and probably do. First, again, the theme of collaboration, commitment to institutionalized engagement of the private sector in government decision-making. Governments still make decisions that we are affected by, and we need to be at those tables. We need to be at the tables when government makes decisions, whether it's about products that our entrepreneurs are making, whether it's about health and safety, whether it's about other kinds of things, so that impacts and consequences of decisions are fully understood. They're never fully understood without private sector input. And we have to be there after implementation to ensure that there's continuous improvement. And you can open those doors. Second, commitment to principles of harmonization and standardization within countries and across borders. You can bring down barriers to trade and costs by facilitating requirements, especially for low-risk shipments and traders. Again, something else that this large group of participants can do. Third, we've talked about this, I think everybody has talked about this today, commitment to communication, timely, clear, transparent, effective, to you and from you. You can make a difference within your communities and beyond. And fourth, and I know this has been mentioned before today, the commitment to knowledge, including investments in education and professional development. We all learn something every day. And in fact, we're all learning something today. Hopefully this is just the beginning of our conversations together. So those are the four sort of thoughts and commitments that I'd leave myself with.
Letitia, so your thoughts on the future of trade?
The key word for everything in the future is sustainability. And meaning in trade, it means looking for regional and local suppliers, that is why I have observed all these free zones programs, all the free trade agreements, because we have to think about how the way to make trade in the more sustainable way. And that led us a good path for trading services, I think. Maybe instead of products or making local, international trade local with all these programs of getting manufacturing closer to the market of consumption. I think also that now business should be seen in a different way, should be seen as a logistic one because of this, all this thing of disruptions. We must think manufacturing according to logistics. So it becomes very important for the small business to be prepared in logistic matters, I think. And of course, in terms of technology, digital technology will prevail. So we have to, as women, to be very knowledgeable and get into the best train in technology that we can. And I think those are the things I think will be the future in trade. Mm-hmm.
Great. So Jane, your thoughts on the future of trade?
Yeah, so first of all, I have to apologize. Our whole internet went down, and I think it's Spectrum, our carrier, so I tried a lot. Anyway, I think, and just to carry on to what Leticia was saying, I think part of the solution, so I was trying to think of the solution, how do we prevent that or help our manufacturing succeed in ability to export more goods? And I think that that's going to mean a whole kind of a shift in the paradigm of education. And this is for boys and girls starting in the middle school. And that is to have more opportunity and a greater emphasis in those years for major offerings. In other words, we should shift and have available opportunities other than just higher education, but we need to start training in technology, industrial arts, vocational options need to be available along with internships and apprentice programs that we long ago threw out and really are main part of our manufacturing process. So we really need to do those things. And that will again solve that logistical problem of having closer manufacturing, but it'll also create jobs and the teen issues and will help with our labor force even in the apprentice programs. So I think it's going to really help increase our ability to export and will provide the critical skilled labor and also many other social and unemployment issues.
Great.
So I think we're going to be in some unsettled times, but this is going to help. Thank you.
And last but not least, Susie, your perspectives on the future of trade.
Yep. I'll just cover an angle that we haven't chatted yet, because all of the angles so far have been excellent. I've seen a big shift in the last 5 years to brands and corporations moving to value both sustainability and balancing off having the right cultures and the right diversity and basically doing the right thing for people and for the planet. And when you think about a massive movement, I think as you look at entrepreneurs and launching new brands, what was okay 10 and 20 years ago, where you just had a brand name and a product inside, is no longer okay. You kind of have to make sure that you understand the sourcing all the way down. You want an authentic story. The brands that I'm working with and close to, I mean, they have community of women farmers that are farming organic and in of course a free trade way. And there's a really higher bar to do things the right way, be transparent and be authentic and not just pay lip service to it. So I think the whole world is demanding much higher visibility and transparency. And that is a massive shift to the trade. Like consumers and retailers want these higher purpose, better for you, the planet, brands. And we have a responsibility as founders to kind of have our voice in that. And it's influencing trade in a big way, because it's influencing the purchase power of what people want and are demanding.
Thank you so much for those thoughts. And before I hand it over to Simona, I just want to say what an honor it's been to have this conversation with such impressive trade professionals and entrepreneurs. The thing I hate about the digital environment, I wish there was a green room somewhere we could go after and just continue the conversation. So hopefully we will have that opportunity. And again, not only am I just so impressed by our women global entrepreneurs, but what a great story about 3 countries that have this special relationship that's rooted in trade, that's rooted in our goods, our services, and our friendship. So thank you all for that. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Simona.
What an important and inspiring conversation. I have answered all of your questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we are out of time. There's one question left for Christine. Christine, I'll make sure to connect you with Jane Skira to answer your question. Everybody else who had questions for me, I will reach out to you via email. I have your emails, and we'll make sure you have the resources you need to join the OWIT chapters or to find resources for your company. On behalf of the Los Angeles Small Business Development Center Go Global program and the Organization of Women in International Trade, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And many, many thanks to all of our great speakers for sharing your inspiring women's stories of success, challenges, and resilience. Let's keep on building a culture of care and community. And for white women in trade like myself, let's use our white privilege to do our work towards economic justice. Let's share resources, learn together, and collaborate. Make sure to find and join your local OWIT chapter networking opportunity on owit.org. If you do not have a local chapter in your region, know that you have all our support to build your own local chapter. You will all receive a recording on today's program via email in the next days. You'll also receive again the speaker's biography with links to all the speakers' contact today. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you soon again. And thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.